Okay. G, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we can start.
You can start. Okay.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. Sachin, I'll screen share. You can start. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for coming in. Okay, I'll just start my screen share first. Okay, great. So hi everybody. This webinar, I mean, you all know me by now, so I won't introduce. This webinar is a sales webinar. The idea is to get a little more comfortable with sales. So you must have already had a webinar on understanding the market. I mean, I did for some of you, but some of you may have done it with Nalin. Understanding the market research and the customer value proposition. And we're going to go a little further today from a customer point of view and understand how to get going with sales and getting comfortable with sales. I mean, let's again make this a little interactive so that we learn from each other's experiences as well. Does anybody here already have sales experience or is doing sales currently? If anybody would like to maybe share their experiences with sales? It was easy, difficult, what was the most challenging, what would you like to understand better, etc. And whoever's not speaking, please put yourself on mute. It will be really helpful. Adam.
We are doing a lot of marketing.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it sales yet.
Okay.
So I don't know. Would that count?
Yeah, I mean, just before sales is of course a lot of marketing effort goes into closing sales also and targeted sales. So of course, I mean that counts, and we'll talk about marketing as well as a sales channel in this webinar. So what is your experience been in marketing?
Well, they keep asking more and more technical details. They keep drilling down. They see the benefit. They see the pitch and they're impressed with the pitch because the pitch is simple. Now
Right.
the hard and right, it has to really make sense to them. So they are
Absolutely.
drilling more and more the technical and the business aspects of it. And if the higher level pitch they have bought in, right, but the groundwork of what is actually whether it makes sense has to be done, and this is the most difficult part. The pitch was very impressive because we have done enough of them and they understood it, but the real part is this one, this section.
Okay. Okay, great. But then since they've taken out time and they're asking you all of these questions and testing it out, etc., that means that you've got good leads, right? And which are maybe likely to convert into sales. At least you've gotten the customer who's interested.
Yeah.
Through your marketing efforts.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And you're a B2B or a B2C?
B2B.
B2B. Okay. Okay, great. Anybody else maybe with a B2C experience that we understand? Yeah.
Juin, this is Anju. Hi. So we have had some sales experience, and we learned that it's the best way that's working for us is we do these 1-hour workshop sessions on sustainable menstruation. We don't push a particular product, including our own. We just give an overview of the whole space. What does it mean to be using disposable menstrual pads, and why are reusable products better for the planet, better for your health, better for your pocket?
Right.
And then in the last 5 or 10 minutes, and depending on the audience, we talk about our product. That this is one of the options. It's not the only option available in India. It's one of the options. So
Okay.
approaching it in this way has helped us a lot.
Helped you. Okay. Okay. Great. So your marketing is kind of more aligned to making the customer more aware about what your product is all about, and it's also a lot to do with the consumer behavior change in that sense. That's what you're targeting and trying to.
Right, right, right.
Okay, great. Great. Thanks, Anju.
Thank
Okay, great. And whoever's putting anything on chat, I really can't see the chat while I'm presenting. So it would be really great if you could just stop me anytime and ask me questions. I'm totally fine. Okay, great. So some of you do have sales experience, but I think a majority of you all don't. So we're going to delve deeper into it. So we're going to direct sales, and after this we'll have another session on customer interactions and how to get better at customer interaction, reading your customer, etc. After this webinar, the next webinar would be on that, and then we'll move on to the mock sales pitch with external mentors and coaches, so that you get a live experience of how to pitch and get some live feedback from experts in the industry. That's the plan sales wise. Okay, so what we cover today is what is a reputable sales process and what does it look like. We'll understand that in theory and maybe take some examples from the audience as well. We'll understand sales and how they are different in a B2C and how they're different in a B2B. Also, who should be that person who should be doing these sales? What makes sense, and whether it should be you, your sales team, external, whoever you've hired, etc. We'll understand that. What are the useful benchmarks for the sales cycle? So what does a sales cycle look like when it is a repeatable sales cycle? What does it look like different from a B2B, B2B versus a B2C? And what are these useful benchmarks that you should keep in mind? Also, once you get to the sales, what is that indicator of customer commitment that you should look for? So we covered this. I mean, Pratap must have done it in the boot camp when we did the mom test, and what are these kind of indicators that come from customer interaction that you should look for. But we'll dwell a little deeper, focused on sales here. Quick recap, we talked about market research, primary versus secondary market research. What does it look like? What should you do to get better customer, market feedback at least. Framework to undertake market research, and hopefully for all of you all, whoever's not done it yet, you've initiated this process. I know some of you have and shared your market surveys and all for feedback, which was quite nice. So anybody else wants to do that, get feedback, more than happy to do that. But whoever hasn't, I think you should go ahead and try to do some market research under the framework that we've discussed. And we spoke about customer personas, and we'll come and refer them a little bit in this presentation as well. Yes, just a quick recap. Yeah, so this is what a sales journey typically looks like. I'm just going to go through it, and we'll discuss each and every aspect in this webinar. So first, we should look at sales from a customer point of view. The customer looks at whenever you approach them with a marketing strategy, or you talk to them, you reach out to them, they will have a problem that needs to be solved. Right? It is that that problem that has been troubling them, that they want to get solved, and when that problem exists, that's when they are your potential customer. When they see your product, they will discover this product as the solution that they've been looking for, that pain point that they have. right? The customer, how you know that they are your customer or your leads, as we'll come forward. As going forward, I'll explain further. Is that they research about your product, about the possibility of this being the solution that they've been looking for. They will research, they will ask you questions on it, proactively ask you questions. They will test your product to see whether it works for them. Because for a lot of us over here, these are going to be some innovative products that maybe the customer has not seen or used before. So to get them to even test it out is actually quite a good lead to have. Okay? And then they make a decision. After all of this, then finally they will make a decision that they want to become your customer. Okay, this is what a complete sales journey would look like. And then an additional sales journey to this will also be how to retain then that customer. Okay, and we'll talk about it later. Your startup, from the startup point of view, so this is from a customer point of view, how do they visualize the sales journey? But from your startup point of view, you will first target who your potential customer looks like, right? From your customer personas that you may have made, the market research that you may have done earlier, the secondary or the primary market research. You understand who your target potential customers would be. You identify one with the highest potential, right? And we'll come to what looks like a high potential. Then you convert them to opportunities. So these are the people that, these are the opportunities that are present to you once you've identified them with, the highest potential market segment. And then you make them the customer. That's when you've actually sold your product. That's when they become your customer, when there's an exchange of money. So from this, now from your startup point of view, coming back to even Bayaji's point, marketing is a very, very strong component in sales. Sales is only the last part when you actually convert them into customer. But the first parts are all about marketing. So who do you target as your potential customer? Identifying the one with the right potential, and then how do you target them? How do you reach out to them? That's a part of marketing. Strategies, how do you attract their attention? How do you make them interested in your product? And then convert them into opportunities. So convert them into, then further on understanding your product, etc., before you convert it completely into sales. And then of course, once a customer has got your product, then year on year or whatever is that your sales cycle looks like, how do you then retain those same customers? So how do you ensure that the customer comes back to you with minimal marketing or sales effort further on? Right? That's the idea. If you're again going to spend an equal number of resources, time and money wise to get that same customer to buy your product again, then maybe it's not the right strategy that you're employing. So retention is a lot to do with minimal resources being used again to retain the customer. Right. So now let's understand each of these one by one in detail. So targeting the potential customers. These are basically customers that are there that come. So you will have done some kind of secondary research, or you've done primary research. You've understood the market, narrowed it down to particular segments, right? Like we spoke about market segmentation. In the bootcamp, you may have narrowed it down to some market segments. Now in these markets, these are all your potential customers, right? But who exactly are those target potential customers? That's where all of these customer personas look like. The idea of a perfect customer. What does it look like? So maybe let's take Anju's case, since she spoke about her startup right now, which is on sustainable menstruation. So her customer persona, the ideal customer for her, I know she targets rural segments. So it looks like a rural woman who's in a menstruating age, right? And looking to find an alternative or looking for a product that addresses a pain point of safe, hygienic, and sustainable menstruation, right? That's the customer persona. Now, whenever she finds this, that she understands that this is the target potential customer. then you go and survey these. So she goes out to the rural market and survey. Then you identify, once you have this target, like that'll be a broad target, right? Then how do you narrow it down further to understand who are these who will then buy from you, right? Identify one with the highest potential. Now this might differ from startup to startup. How do you identify this with the highest potential? But basically, uh, whoever you can connect to, who is that accessible consumer segment that out of these whole target consumers, target customers, who are these that you can reach out to easily through different references. It might be a word to word mouth publicity. You get these direct references. Maybe they come to a certain conference and you know that whoever's come to this conference is more likely because it aligns to the kind of persona that you're looking for, and you can easily get their details from there, connect to them easily. It might be LinkedIn, etc. So these are the ones which become your potential leads. Also, another way to target this, when you are understanding both your customer persona as well as the leads, is also to understand whether they have a buying potential or not, whether they're able to buy your product, even though they might have the need, whether they have a potential of buying also needs to be one of the concerns when you are even framing the customer persona. And then when you convert them into opportunities, means that once you have the lead, you have their contact details, you know how to reach out to them, you show them your customer, you show them your product, and make them understand what is that your product does. Give them a demo, maybe make them understand the value proposition that your product offers, the various features of your product, etc. Right? And then gauge whether all of this is resonating with them. And how do you gauge that? Is through reactions, through interest, if they are asking you some follow-up questions, whether they're interested in testing it out, whether they're coming to see your demo or not, etc. There are various ways to gauge whether you're going to use this opportunity to convert them into a customer. I request everybody to please put yourselves on mute if you haven't already. Okay, great. Any questions, please feel free to just stop, or if you just want to ask questions about your own startup, etc. Feel free to just unmute and speak. Okay, so this is what a sales and a marketing funnel essentially looks like. So you have a target, which is your beachhead market. Let's put it in terms that we all understand now. Then it converts into leads, right? Whoever you can you can basically access, converts into leads, then to opportunities. Until this time, it is all about marketing. So what are these marketing strategies that you employ in each of these target buckets? Yes, is there a question? Yeah.
Yeah, Joy, this is Rakesh here. See, when we are into a B2C product, how do we take a targets? How do you take a target when if it's a consumer product or if it's an FMCG product?
Right. So I mean, what is your product?
So we are into an electric mobility.
Right, electric mobility. So I mean, your target can be, who is that market segment that is going to take your product. So I don't now recall what your business model looks like. But then, is it you can define it as age-wise demographic, or you can define it even according to the gender, according to the income groups. You can narrow it down according to geography. So it may look like, say, in a particular city, a higher middle class.
See, we are into like when we say an electric mobility, our product is a hybrid conversion kit. Like what we are doing is our product converts the existing customer scooter, petrol scooters, to an electric hybrid. So the point is like, so unlike idea, when we're talking about a pure, like for example, if it's a scooter, there we can actually target a very specific customers. Could be like, as I said, if a customer is we are targeting a premium scooter, then we can target versus high speed. So we can understand and we can kind of visualize what would be the customer expectation in that.
Right.
Now, when the target is an existing scooter owner who's been, and this existing scooter owner could be on a variant, like it could be anybody, like anybody who's
Right.
so here what happens with us, like what challenge what you're finding is, so we cannot categorize these customers, because a scooter owner could be a youngster or an old person, could be a female, could be could be anybody. And so what we are trying to figure out is that what is that one need which we are trying to like one what do you say, one problem or a challenge, like customer need, which we are trying to address. So that's becoming a kind of a very diluted what do you say, concept.
So what's your customer value proposition? What are you selling it on? Have you identified that?
Yeah, see, what we are trying to sell when we are trying to visualize it is when backing on the cost of operation. For example, a petrol scooter will cost you like maybe 8 rupees per kilometer, something like that. So when this would be costing around 2 rupees per kilometer. So that's one thing. But again, is that the only thing? Whether the consumers, for example, when we an elder category people who have been using this scooter for some time, and some of them are not even bothered about the cost, but what they value is the sustainability. They say, I have enough, like that this doesn't make sense, like to run the scooter on petrol and all the sustainability, climate impact and all those concepts. But the youngsters are like some people who are into work and logistics and supply. For them, the cost of operation becomes a priority. And similarly, when it comes to a woman and a kind of an housewife who's also using a scooter, again the cost for her, like if she is spending 2,000 rupees on a petrol to drop a kid to the school, and if she can do that under 500 rupees and under less than that, I think it's a direct saving in her pockets. So what we are finding is that we are having this diversified customer base, and who are all our potential customer. So how do we package the value proposition? that's a catch to us.
Absolutely. So I think that's a very valid question, and it's I mean true that we always say that it has to be one value proposition which really drives a good word-to-word mouth publicity. That's for sure. But then it seems to me that, of course, there would be different market segments which would prefer different value propositions. So like I look at it, if it's a typical middle class or a low middle class, they would be more concerned about the cost of operations, for sure. And also, if the running is too much, they would also be willing to put in some money to save the total cost of operations, because they are traveling that much, and it matters to them that they would reduce the price, right? So then so you can actually make these customer personas and we can discuss this also later, but you can make these customer personas that how you're saying that housewives, so that they're going to be traveling to and fro, and if you've done a market segmentation, that they prefer. So to narrow it down, you can always say that housewives in a household of, say, so and so income group in so and so locality is our target market segment. You can also say that people who commute daily to work, whether they need it or not. Then when you come to the sustainability point of view, that's a bit tricky, because then these kind of segments are harder to, because you don't know who is interested in sustainability or not. So then that target segment is what we have noticed is better to target through these different groups. So maybe there's a Facebook group on sustainability. Then that definitely people over there would be interested in sustainability. That becomes your target customer segment. Or you connect to them through various LinkedIn groups or conferences, whether they come for certain sustainability conferences or meetups. That those become much more effective channels than actually keeping it broader and going to everybody in a particular age group just because.
Correct. And see, another interesting, personas of few customers are also like, see, some of the customers when they call, their interest to adapt our kit is primarily because there is a sentimental value to the scooter. What they say is, my scooter is 10 years old. It was my father's scooter that I used in my college, and today even if I keep it, it's not that's not worth to sell. So rather, I will convert to an electric and use it. So there are like that kind of categories also. That here there's a category of this kind of a customer personas won't be captured in a new product, but this is something which is kind of refreshes the existing product. So this is again kind of that's a kind of a diversified personas where in a market.
Correct. And that being said, also, I think it's important to understand that there'll always be various benefits of a product, and people might buy it for different reasons. But you as a startup cannot keep changing your marketing strategies, because every marketing strategy has a cost behind it, and a significant cost too. So if somebody is buying it for a sentimental purpose, but they are not a very large target market segment, then they'll anyway come to you if they see an advertisement somewhere, but maybe it doesn't make economical sense for you to advertise it to them particularly, or create a different marketing. So they that's not your target. That's not your target potential market. So if they come to you themselves, it's fine. But then you cannot go and target. You cannot make them the target.
No, exactly, Joy. So because now when the scrappage policy is all in the draft and kind of in discussion, so we cannot market it saying that you don't scrap your scooter and you can reconvert, because it becomes against the policies which is getting deployed.
Sure. And also, it's really up to you. So if you feel that, just the cost savings is a big enough target potential market for you right now, then maybe it makes sense to just keep that as your customer persona and follow that, rather than even diversifying to a sustainable, because sustainable marketing is also not that easy, and it is expensive as well. So if you feel that that's not a big enough market segment as of now, at least in early stages, you can just keep it limited to a cost saving value proposition, and keep that as your target.
Thanks. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then, just quickly recapping, like the target potential market, whatever it is that you decide, it should be a big enough funnel, because the funnel keeps getting smaller and smaller as you go ahead, right? So whoever is it that you target, how many of them can you actually reach and make them accessible to you as converting them into leads? Then you can use that opportunity to show them and showcase your product, etc. Help them test it. Make sure that they understand it, and which will then lead to them being converted as your customer, as direct sales. Right? This is the funnel that we look at as a sales and marketing funnel. So as I said, once you have the contact information of from the targets, they become the lead generally. And then once they're the leads, you have to understand whether they qualify to go further to target them as opportunities. Right. So if they are the some of the eligibility criteria, as I said, also is that whether they are able to buy a product or not. So they may have the highest need. They may be really interested, but if they do not have the capabilities of buying, then they definitely not they definitely don't qualify to be your opportunity. They may be an opportunity later. So even if they don't have the buying potential right now, and typically this may be true in a B2B as well. So supposing the company does not have a budget this year, that does not mean that they will not have a budget next year. So it's always useful to keep these buckets intact, and you can decide for yourself when is the next time you want to follow up. So if it's a lead, you want to follow up maybe once a year. But if you've categorized them into opportunities, if you've shown them the product, etc., and they still haven't bought it, maybe it's useful to follow up with them sooner, maybe once in every 6 months. And if they are into a broader, about target market segment, target potential customers, then maybe it makes sense to just go and talk to them maybe every year to find out whether you convert them into leads, if you can get their target information or not. So it really depends, how you manage each of these buckets. How do you want to approach them, and what do you want, what is the kind of information you want to keep sending out to them at what time periods, etc. That's the strategy that you need to define as well as a startup. Yeah, and then definitely understanding whether they are the decision makers or not. This is important in both B2C and a B2B, but more so in a B2B. Whether they are in a position to decide or not, that also makes you understand whether they are a potential opportunity or it's going to be a longer sales cycle and you need to come back to them, etc., to convert them into becoming a customer. So automated sales, these are the kind of sales that you can do. Today, I mean, I think with COVID, a lot of sales have become online sales, right? So automated sales is one part of it. I mean, when you have just subscription model where people just have to come onto your platform and just subscribe for it, becomes an automated sales process. Outside sales, when you go in for an in-person meeting, right? This is the most expensive but unavoidable in certain business models. You have to go out and meet. Unless you meet, typically when it's a big capital investment, when it's a sake of reputation for a business, if they purchase your product, etc., or it's a longer, if it's a service model, they need to look at the service provider to understand you, trust you. In all of these scenarios, in-person meetings become very important, and that's unavoidable for some, and these are the most expensive sales. So you also, if it is an expensive sale, then you need to understand better which is your lead and which is going to convert into an opportunity. So make your funnel narrow, understand the opportunities better, so that it leads to less resources when it comes to in-person meetings. Inside sales from own office via phone, email, make it simpler. Cold calls to all target potential markets, then understanding who's showing interest, following up with them, etc., become part of inside sales. I think with COVID, a lot of us are restricted to online and inside sales rather than in-person meetings as well. Sales in B2B and B2C. B2C, first we'll talk about B2C, and whoever's here can also share your insights, whether you agree and how's the process been for you. But generally in a B2C, there's a wider data set, definitely. And you need to go through a wide data set to even understand that whether that's your potential target customer or not, whether they have that need or not, what do their needs look like, and what is that decision driver that is going to drive them to arrive at a decision which makes sense. Okay, so B2C generally is a wider data set that you need to go through, unfortunately, and both for secondary research and for primary research. Mapping the customer's journey becomes important. Understanding your customer more in detail, what drives them, because B2B might be more straightforward because generally it's the profits, and if you understand the business model of a B2B, it becomes easier to drive these sales. But in a B2C, really going ahead and understanding the customer becomes important. Yes, is there a question? Go ahead. Okay, that's not it. Yeah, generating a lot of leads. So for a B2C, typically you need to get as many leads as possible. So getting a lot of contact information from many consumers becomes important. This is for a fact because generally B2C are sales which should be higher in number to generate that kind of profit. Also, the number of people that you meet, and then conversion ratios also is a concern in B2C. So in both aspects, generating a lot more leads becomes important. And and to just close the sale. So just trying to close the sale as much as possible, because generally B2C is a shorter sales cycle. So if once you understand that the customer has this need, and just reaching out to them quickly and closing sales is important in a B2C. So you can't have longer sales cycles. You can't be that, now that I have a lead, I've reached out to them, then now you reach out to them after 3 months and say that, okay, fine, now buy my product. Generally, it's a very fast closing of deal that works in a B2C. Whereas in a B2B, it's a little different. You need to understand the organization's needs, understanding what the need is currently for the organization, whether they are facing certain problems which are leading to lesser sales for them, or whether it's leading to less profit margins, etc. Whatever that pain point might be for the organization, understanding that. And the decision drivers. So the decision driver might be that they just need better automated solutions right now. They need to increase their profit margins. They just need to increase their brand value, which might be true for many of our products. They need to go more sustainable. There might be many decision drivers in a B2B, and understanding that from an organization's point of view. Mapping the organization structure becomes important, because you'll understand who is that person who's going to talk to you, and understanding who's going to make the final decision, because that might be different. So you may have to go through an entire organization structure. Finance will be different. The person who's finally going to vet your proposal may be different. The person who you just need to first meet and make them understand your product might be different. So really understanding it, because in the end you might know that, oh my God, I was talking to somebody, but they are not really the key decision makers in the organization. So knowing that from the start becomes important. So do your research of the organization structure for sure if you're in a B2B. Finding what budget does the organization have to offer to buy a certain product or a service from you, and refining your own pricing structure to match the organization's need, right? Maybe they don't have enough money to do a down payment right now. So maybe you can come up with a different pricing structure where they can pay you every 3 months, or they can just lease it from you, etc. So that's really up to your startup, but understanding this is important if you want to close the deal or make the organization also more comfortable with your proposal. And of course, adhering to the procurement process. So whatever the process is for an organization, it might be quite rigid depending on the kind of organization you're approaching. If it's a government, they're very strict regimes that you need to follow. The rules, regulations, process, all of that becomes quite important, even for large corporates as well. Anybody is putting anything on chat? Can I just repeat? I can't see it. You can just unmute and ask me if you have any questions, or you just want to share something.
Hi, Joy.
Yeah, hi, Aranka.
Yes, so I actually kind of went through the whole journey in my own way. Now, actually, in 2014, when I met the Road Development Authority, and they liked this the elephant crossing idea, and they said, let's go ahead and do it. And then what happened was, what they said was, this needed to be passed by the Parliament as a gazetted, to be gazetted. So then I think that's where in the B2B adhering to the procurement process came. And then again, 2019, I was only looking in for the street, but then there was one gentleman who said, this might be a good solution even for the railways. So he actually wanted to put me to the Wildlife Ministry Secretary, and because he was really keen on putting this kind of a solution, bringing this kind of solution to the railways, because there were so many elephant deaths that were happening.
Okay.
So yeah, and then again last year I met one of the paint companies, and what they actually told me was that apparently they have a paint that is being given to the Road Development Authority, and this can be used as a CSR project for them for their brand building.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sure.
there's in any of these, is there a B2C that happens here? No, right? It's all B2B, is it?
So you definitely know. It seems like clearly B2B, whether it be government or corporates with CSR, it will be a B2B sales cycle for you, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. But great. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Okay, great. So now who needs to do the early sales? Any insights? Who do you think from your startup needs to do these early sales? Do you hire a salesperson? Anybody's hired a salesperson over here? Or you yourself are doing the sales? Any insights? Or have you given it to a third party distribution network and they are doing the sales for you? Anybody who's already doing sales has any insights on this? What works best?
So can I go again, because I actually did some sales.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
as if you're doing all the sales. For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, thanks, Ananta.
Right.
Okay. So ideally, like Aranga is doing as well, founders, you yourselves, you need to do some of the early sales at least. And I would say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we are actually I am myself doing the sales. So
Hmm.
basically, what I was doing is I'm doing outside sales earlier actually. So reaching out to
Right.
customer by various marketing approach, like it can be traditional way, like a simple pamphlet or approach to the customer, tell about the services. So I was doing that kind of sales, and we are renting the vehicles as I told you renters. We are into direct B2C market, where we need to rent the vehicles for individuals for their daily commuting.
Right. So now, are you still doing sales yourself, or have you hired somebody to do sales for you?
No, I am doing. Me and my co-founder both are doing sales together. So right now, what we are doing is we doing inside sales right now. Basically, following up the customers we are already having on board, and we are trying to get them more and to get them back for more and more usage for our vehicles. Like,
Great.
How do we know when to transition from just the owners to, say, hiring someone who has the specialized skill set?
Yeah, correct. So I mean, as Saurabh has also said, Edanka has said, and Niyaz is, I think, also saying the same thing. The first early sales need to be by the founders, typically, because one is that you get great feedback directly from your consumers, and that is very important to improve your product, improve the sales process, understanding, how do you communicate about your product, whether it's been well received or not. And when you yourself have been closely involved, no one can be as passionate about your product or your startup. Nobody who you hire will have the same amount of passion that you will have yourself. So that comes across when you're doing the early sales. So one, that these early sales will be very much effective, and secondly is that you will get, these sales are where you get maximum feedback. You will never get feedback through general surveys. You will never get feedback through your, generally, if you just talk to people about your startup idea, it's during the sales process that you get maximum feedback, right? And this is really important. And if you yourself are not able to sell your product, it is assured that nobody else will be able to sell that product because you know your product inside out. You are the one who's passionate about it. You are the one who's believed in this idea and seen it through, right? So no one else will be able to sell it if you yourself are not able to sell it, right? And that being said, Niyaz, to answer your question, when the early sales have started picking up, you are confident that this sales process is giving fruits. It is being sold. Your product is being sold now with this particular sales process. This marketing strategy is working. Then you can definitely employ somebody for sales. You can employ a sales team and make them understand your product. So a lot of training goes in a good, effective sales team, for sure. For you to make them understand how to go about the sales process, why we're doing it in the first place, etc., to make them align with your vision. And if you can do all of that, then that's the time that you transition your sales process to a specialized sales team, right? But you as a founder should also be involved in sales somewhere or the other. So you should be very closely involved till at least it's a young startup, for sure. But that's when you can start transitioning. And then slowly you can also transition to a distributors channels, other third-party distributor channels, etc. But that's only when your first early sales have been effective and you have confidence in your strategy. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, go ahead.
Mine is an idea and it's not like an established business, or I haven't even started anything. It's like initially in the idea stage. Do I need to, like, for a sample or to check the feasibility, do I need to see if this is gonna work and like try to sell? And like initially, like for example, let's say for a sample, start and see how it works. So how am I supposed to go in this?
So when you've not started anything, but you're just in the ideation phase, I think a lot of market research is important right now for you to understand the feasibility and the need in the market, for sure. So for you, typically, the more number of primary research that you do, the more data that you collect on consumer needs, the better you will be able to start with the marketing and sales process once you dive into it. And since yours is a B2C, it can be shorter marketing and sales cycles, so you can directly dive into it once you start. So once you get your products in place, and yours is a fairly simple one as well. So you can start immediately with the first product that you have, you can dive into it. But that's only when you understand what is the need. You have a well-defined customer persona, you have your target potential customers defined. So all of that you can do right now. Because you have a pretty clear idea about what you want to do. So I think that all of that you can do and start finding these leads who you can start talking to, and understand. So till that opportunity, if you remember that the sales funnel, till the opportunity you can do all of the things and understand the marketing that goes behind it as well. Right? Okay. So the sales cycle duration for a B2C, it's typically few days, right? So once you have your lead, you have understood what you've understood and shown them the products. You've converted into an opportunity. Then to convert them into a customer, a buying customer, will just take a few days transition. But of course, the marketing is essential, and you need to understand what kind of marketing is effective, right? So as we were discussing before, with the electric mobility, the hybrid kits, what kind of marketing is it that's really going to help you get the maximum leads or help you get those kind of customers, and understanding the interests becomes important. So in a B2C, marketing strategies take time, but the sales cycle in itself is just a few days. B2B is often longer because the sales cycle is longer because of the organization structure, the different types of processes that you will have to get into, how do you go about it, all of that will be longer. So 3 to 9 months is not rare in B2B. And selling to government would be an even longer process generally, because then there is tendering involved, there are a lot more processes involved, etc. So selling to government would be longer than selling to a corporate in B2B. Useful indicators of understanding customer commitment. This is a little repetition of the MOM test that we did in the boot camp. But typically the good kind of customer commitment is time commitment that you see from a customer, right? If the customer sets up the next meeting immediately, if they say that, okay, meet me next week, so and so time, and at that meeting I need so and so information from you, with known goals, so you know that you're proceeding further and they're ready to give their time to you. That's a pretty good commitment, customer commitment, right? They actually give you some feedback. They tell you that, I need so and so improvement. They give you feedback and help you improve on your sales or product. That also is a good customer there. That means that the customer cares enough to give you this feedback and would potentially be a customer who will buy your product if you listen to the feedback given. They themselves use the trial and they're interested to see how it goes, so that they can then buy it for a longer time duration, or they would buy it and pay you money for it, etc. So if they go through the trial themselves, is a good enough indication that it's going forward. Okay? Good benchmark to keep. Reputation risks. So as we also spoke about, if you come to me, say you're selling something to the Climate Collective, you come to me and you give a pitch. Then I say, okay, this seems interesting. Okay, I'll refer you to Pratap, and Pratap will then have a meeting with you. I wouldn't do that unless I'm convinced that this product would be useful for Climate Collective, right? I wouldn't take that risk to introduce you to my peers or my team, because I wouldn't want them to then waste their time at all. Right? So reputation becomes quite important. If I'm referring you to a third party, that's also equally important, that I'm willing to risk my reputation by referring you to somebody else. Right? This typically is a good example of a commitment by the customer. Introduction directly to the decision maker. So if it is a B2B, then the boss or the immediate decision maker who's going to buy the product, you immediately send the person. Suppose Eranga comes to me and says that I want to buy, and I know that, okay, this is taken care of by the CSR sales team, and they'll buy it immediately if they like the product. And I directly send Eranga there. That means that this is a good meeting, right? That is a commitment. Or if it is a B2C, maybe the decisions of the house are taken by whoever is the decision maker in the house, and I say that, okay, just give the pitch to this person, they'll buy it. That's a good indication. If somebody likes your product, has used the product, gone through the trial, and they publicly state that, yes, this is a very good product, they are ready to give a testimonial for you, that's also very, very big customer commitment. And of course, financial commitment is always the best commitment. Cannot be a better commitment than this. If somebody signs a deal, they give you money, pre-order deposit, they're ready to give some kind of deposit as a commitment, that is a clear indication that, of course, they're a customer. Letter of intent may not be that big a commitment, because a lot of people might give letter of intent without meaning for it to go ahead. But if it includes some milestones, that if you fulfill so and so obligations, yes, then I would buy. So if it has clear milestones written, then that kind of letter of intent becomes a good enough commitment for you to understand that, yes, they are definitely a customer. Right? Now, many people might have this doubt as well, but when should you have a demo and when should you do a pilot? So demo and pilot are two different things. Demo is an indicative, a trial run for whoever you want to show if you feel that, yes, this is definitely my target customer, this is an opportunity that they will convert and buy my product, then you take them through a demo of your product, right? This demo should be at a neutral location. So if it's a product demo that you want them to see, it should be an accessible location that you can take them to fast. If it's an online one, then yes, it's an easier one. But if it's an offline one, it should be somewhere that they can easily reach. It shouldn't be very far off that somebody says that forget it, I don't want to see the demo, right? It should be well designed. So basically, you should know what kind of data are you collecting while somebody is going through the demo. It should show clear, outcomes from the demo. So you just have that one shot at the demo, a well-designed demo, right? And set benchmarks for future scale deployment. So make the consumer understand that yes, this is just a demo, but if you do buy it, these are so and so benchmarks that a fully scaled deployment will look like. Right? Pilot is something that you do with a high potential client. So once you're convinced that this is my client, he has a buying reason, he or she will, has a definitive need and has a buying capacity, has shown enough interest, etc. Then you do a pilot with them. And ideally a pilot essentially, right? So it should have clear written milestones and outcomes. So make sure that the agreement says that if this pilot goes well, they are committed to make a deal with you for further deployment. That's not true with a demo, but that's true with a pilot, right? Because you're customizing the pilot according to the needs. Great. So any questions on this? Do you want to discuss your startup? Any reflections? Yeah.
Can I ask the customer to pay for the pilot?
You can actually, sure you can. And you can have that kind of agreement with the customer that, this is a pilot. So maybe at a concession, but yes, of course they can pay for a pilot.
Even at cost price, it's normally done?
Yeah. At a cost price. So a minimal price for them to see, demonstrate. If your costs are high to do the pilot, then yes, typically you can make an arrangement that they pay for that pilot. But if since it is a pilot, it can also be, it's up to you and your typical, it should be decided according to your model. But the agreement can state that if it actually leads to so and so outcomes, then they will pay the full amount. Otherwise, they can just pay some starting amount, etc. So it can be outcome based as well. The payments in a
The
pilot.
outcome of the pilot.
Outcome of the pilot. So if it leads to a definitive, if it's a successful pilot or not, then they can pay a certain amount at the end of the pilot and certain amount at the start of the pilot, etc. So those kind of agreements can be made.
Okay.
G, what would be the legal agreement to bind the customer for the pilot?
Legal agreement with the customer. So I mean,
Yeah.
again, typically it can be that, if it is a successful pilot, if they feel that they're making, whatever it is that they wanted to understand from the pilot, if it makes sense for them, then they will definitely buy it. These kind of agreements can be made.
No, like what would you call that agreement if I have to ask a lawyer, or is it something that is standard?
Oh, so these are typical contracts. I mean, contract with the company. I don't think there's any other name with it. A sales contract.
For a pilot, is it?
Yeah. So this can be like a normal sales contract only. So pilot can be part of sales. So if this pilot goes well, then they're obligated to move ahead with the sales process. Move ahead with the contract. And I'm not aware whether there's a typical name to it, but I'll also find out from the lawyer if there is. Hi. Yeah, who's this?
I do have a question in a way. I'm
Yeah.
not sure whether it's directly involved with sales, but our products, one of the biggest selling points is the fact that its price, like in the sense, it is able to almost half the current market price. So, but the thing is, because we would be working closely with the current industry as well, they are kind of concerned because there's such a big disparity. So, what would be a way for a win-win, like for them? How can we still reach the price, but without concerning the existing players?
I don't quite get it. Can you explain your startup a little bit to give some
Oh, okay.
context to this?
So let's say a cafe industry, like a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a salad is currently available at $10. Because of our approach, we are
Right.
able to do it at $5.
Right.
But in order for us to properly really do it well, we do need to work with existing restaurants and cafes. So their concern is because of that difference, it would cannibalize their sales, correct?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so in that kind of environment, are there any techniques that, like, any novel techniques that can be put in place to kind of make both parties happy?
So I mean, when you're talking about, so yours is sustainable packaging, right? That's what you're saying. Or no,
We're
it's a salad.
providing greens actually, so salads in a way.
Salad.
Like just,
Oh yeah, the
yeah.
microgreen, the fast
Yeah,
food.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, now I remember. Okay, so you're saying that the current, so you need to go through the current cafes to sell your products through the current cafes. And
Currently,
then
we already have a pilot setup, and it was going pretty well. But the owners started to get worried about the pricing aspect actually. So we're trying to negotiate with them to kind of reach an equitable solution. And their main concern is the market price is being like destroyed or something along those
disrupted.
lines.
So there's a
Yeah.
price disruption, and they're not comfortable with that.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, if it's leading to higher sales, and if it's going through their cafe distribution channels, I would say. So I mean, if they're selling for $10 and you're saying that you're selling for $5, but then at $10, if you're just selling a few units, and with $5
exactly.
you're selling much more, and if there's a higher profit, then if you can share the profit margins with them, then I don't think it should really matter, right?
Okay,
and if you're right, so I mean, you can share profit margins with them, and then it would justify the disruption in price.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we should kind of focus more on a B2B, like distributor sort of aspect. So maybe have the final price something like 6 or 7. Like, would we be able to like ask for like maximum retail prices? Are those things that we can do?
You can, but I mean, for this sort of thing, I would suggest that I mean, see, if your pricing works and it is generating much higher sales, you need to see the price versus sales aspect. So the final sales, say after 1 month, as respect to the price. So price as such wouldn't matter if the final sales turnover is more. I would say the revenue part of it is more, and then you can share the revenue. But if the cafe is continuing to sell at $10 and they are uncomfortable with you're selling at 5, then it makes sense that if it's affecting that they're not ready to then take up your this is something of a concern like that, then maybe you have a deal with them that okay, I'll sell at 7 and I'll still split the profits with you, etc. So it really depends on what kind of profit margins are they agreeing to, rather than just acting like a distribution channel. You can have sales margins.
Like, are there any like case studies that maybe I could like refer to that you know of, or something?
To this particular case, not that occurs to me immediately, but definitely, I mean, if I come across, or just maybe give me some time and I'll get back.
Understood. All right.
Something comes to me.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Cool.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Moza
Yeah.
from UAE. Thank you for the amazing presentation. I have a question regarding our app. It's user-generated application, and it started with grabbing the attention of like university student individual to generate information or feedback about like green product, green events happening here in UAE, and using this generated information later to sell them for service provider to grab selling them for them to grab more client for them. So the idea, you can see the first phase of the project is how can I sell my idea for the individual users so they can grab their attention to become part of this application. And so later when I generate the information, it's easy to target the service provider. So my question, how can I, at the beginning, how can I gain the attention of individuals to be part of this application?
Right. I mean, that's a good question. And for such platforms, typically when you need both sides on the platform, so you need the service providers as well on the platform, and you need the other side, the users as well, right? So
Yes.
who comes first? And without the service providers, are the users going to come on board or not? That becomes a challenge when it comes to sales, for sure, right?
Yes. Yes, true.
So I mean, see, there are various ways in which this can be handled. One is that you give some incentives. So I think as we were discussing also in the bootcamp, that you can so if they come onto your platform, what do they get? You know, are they going to get discount coupons? What is that value proposition come on, right? And I mean, that becomes one. And second becomes that, you know, networking seems to be quite an interesting proposition for these kind of platforms. So a lot of people will come on board knowing that similar minded people who believe in sustainability, etc., are already there on the platform. Right. So even if at the start, since you do not have the other side on board, and maybe it's more difficult to give value propositions like discount coupons and whatever else that you know is your offering on the platform, networking becomes quite an interesting proposition to give for them to come. You know, that becomes a sales point as well. That if they come, they'll get access to so many people. And also then in the future, so you can have a demo that how this app is going to work. If they come on board, then in the future they're going to get so and so discount coupons. So whoever is your target potential customer, you can send them demos to see, look through. You can create a nice demo video and send them. Yeah, I mean, these are some of the sales channels that you can use, and you can, I mean, market these in typical, because since yours is a green and you're looking at eco-conscious people and sustainability enthusiasts, you know, these conferences, various groups, and there are plenty actually right now on social media, as you can see on Facebook, etc. There are many groups that you can tap into. You can use these as your sales funnel.
Thank you for your insight. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, Joey. This is Bhakti here.
Hi, Bhakti.
So my question was that in terms of my product, which is an online trial room, so how would I know that, you know, how much to start developing the product for a demo or a pilot? I mean, pilot is pretty straightforward. It seems that, you know, someone who's super interested and willing to invest in it, like, you know, and trying to run a pilot or partially pay for it, or, you know, that sort of thing. But how do I understand, like, if I want to do even a demo, like, how would I essentially go about it?
Yeah, I think the answer is only market surveys here. So if you can get a lot of information from market surveys and understand the need of the customer, so the more you understand this, the more you'll understand whether there's a need for a demo or not. So are people really into it? Whether they want to see the product, you know, because I understand that yours might be a high, is it a high capital intensive product?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. So a lot of effort is going to go into even building the product.
Exactly.
Yeah, so a lot of surveys, I think that's the only answer. So getting answers like whether people are willing to purchase such a product or not, how much are they willing to pay, whether you think there's a need, and what does this customer segment look like, how big is the customer, etc. So just getting as much information, and B2C means that there's just more and more customer service that you need to get that conviction that you want to go ahead and understand the need.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Yes, Shinaz, raised your hand.
Yeah, in my case, I'm not going to make a prototype or anything like that. I'm going to import directly from China. So, what shall I do in this part?
I mean, sure. You don't have a prototype. You still have a prototype because whatever you're importing becomes your prototype in that sense. Whether that's required in the market or not, etc. But then the sales process remains the same. So what you're importing is sustainable packaging solutions, right?
Yeah.
So whether you're B2B or B2C, I don't really remember, but whether there's a need, what does your target potential customer look like? Whether they're corporates, I think you mentioned that you're going to look at corporates and cafes or restaurants, right? What was your picture? I forget. But whether they're going to buy it or not, whether you can reach them, access them, how many corporates can you access and get in. Whether do you have to go for meetings to make them understand, show them the product, or make them understand how long do the sales cycles last for you? Whether it's one meeting, it's 5 meetings, it's 3 months,
Okay.
and how many can you convert into then actual sales? And whether they buy it for their entire corporate chain or not, all of that. So all of that comes in this, and how you're going to market it.
Yes, of course. Yes, we are going to market. Yeah, that's right.
Hi. Is that noise coming from you or is it someone else? Okay, it's you. That's fine. So, I mean, how do you market it? Whether they actually need a sustainable packaging or not, and whether you market it on price or whether you market it on the sustainability aspect of it. All of that matters.
Both the sustainability and the price.
Both sustainability and price, okay. But then
The
you
issue
need to
of
go and
plastic
understand.
pollution.
Yeah. Okay. But you need to go and understand the organization needs, whether they're looking for sustainable solutions or whether they're looking for price comparisons, and whether that that's your call, but you need to understand those markets.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Hello, Joey.
Hi.
I want to ask you something. Right now, we are doing our business is we are selling fresh vegetable into international market. The business model is B2B business model, and right now we are doing our pilot kind of thing that we are conducting, that we are trading, buying from a wholesaler and selling it to wholesaler. That's what we are doing, and the margin that we put for every consignment is 8 to 15%. So when we are going to do, when we are planning to tie up with farmers and do a mass production of vegetables and then sell it. So the difference will be about 50 to 60% in the market. So right now, if I now, as this is a sales process, but the question is slightly different. When we are approaching to the investors, so how we can show that differences of margin in trading and the production and then sell it to the customers.
How do you show the differences in profit margins that you'll have to an investor?
Yes.
So, I mean, you can't show it as direct financials. Is it not a straightforward calculation that you can show how you're reducing The
Yeah,
cost?
yeah. But in sales pitch, as approaching to investor is also a sales pitch, right? So how we can uh, do it in a short way? Can
Yeah.
can I?
Sure.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, not very pertinent to this webinar, I have to say, because this it's not clearly a
All
sales
right, all
pitch.
right.
But all right, to answer your question, I mean, I don't see why. I mean, see, you can always show what you're currently doing in the market and show the cost differential if you go about just developing it from the farmer. So whatever are the increased costs when it comes to the wholesaler versus a direct production from the farmer, uh, that can be directly shown as financials. And I think that makes your case quite strong, because since you're already doing the sales, I don't think a investor needs more than that if they can see that there's a direct increase. But that being said, there always be questions on how you're going to implement. How are you aware that it working with farmers has its own complications involved, and whether you have addressed these concerns or not, whether you're comfortable working with. Have you identified these farmers who are ready to work with you, and are you giving them a fair price or not? So all of these concerns, if you can show and if you can demonstrate that you're capable of doing this, and if you're going to give a fair price to the farmer, and what is the social benefit that is going to even come out of it, because when you talk about these things, even if there's an environmental impact, there has to be a social impact, and
Social impact, that is
various
must.
stakeholders and various social actors are involved in this whole process. So if you can show all of that, then that becomes a good enough sales pitch, even apart from the financials. I think all of these aspects are important when you are looking into it.
All right. Thank you so much. That's pretty amazing.
Anyone else?
So verifying. Okay. My question is, like, since mine is an idea, as you have mentioned before, that market research is where I can go. Do I need a demo, or is market research just enough?
For now, market research is enough. You can identify your target potential customers, you identify the need, build up customer personas, and are convinced that this is your target customer segment, right? Then when you get the leads, and then you feel that, okay, fine, now I may, this has a potential of converting just the target potential segment into a potential customer. This is an opportunity, and they seem to be interested. They have a sufficient buying reason. They are the, they're accessible to me, etc. Then is when you show them the demo, right? That's when you should have a demo ready. Once you have contacted them and they seem interested, and that's an opportunity then to show them the demo.
Actually, for the final pitch, do I need this information? Like, for example, before that, do I need to actually
No.
make a demo?
No. So you need the market survey. You need customer interactions. So you need some customer interviews to understand and get feedback. But I mean, it's up to you. Yeah, if you feel that the customer is asking for a demo and they don't understand your product, and they need to see a demo to answer your questions and your feedback, then is when you would need a demo. Otherwise, then it's fine if you can do without it. For this particular CLP, there's no such requirement, I would say. No hard and fast requirement. It depends from startup to startup.
Okay, thank you.
But what would be your demo like? Would you show them your upcycled product, or what have you made from old clothes? Is that it?
My currently what's in my head is, because first I will also need to collect from them, right? So my idea is basically reach out to universities. For market research, I'm planning to do questionnaires, and to do a demo, I think I would need to collect from them as well, because one, I am basically the main idea is for them to use recycled stuff. So that means they will
Right.
also should have the habit of letting go of things that they are hoarding. That's so in that aspect, I was thinking maybe having two Viber communities, one where I collect, the other one where I send. So
Yeah. But then I mean, how difficult is a demo to do? Was my question. So just getting in few old clothes from friends and making different. I mean, making whatever the clothes that you made from old clothes, and just taking pictures and posting it is something like a demo, right?
Yes.
In itself. So at least you have some product to showcase like a demo. That this is what I collected and this is what the final product looks like. If you are interested, you can send me your clothes and I'll make something similar for you. Right? That becomes a pilot for you then. If somebody's interested. But a demo is as simple as just getting old clothes and converting it and taking pictures and putting it on groups and sending it across to target customers who you think would be interested in looking at it.
So for this, we will need only numbers, right?
No, there's no ad infrastructure. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, hi Joey.
Hi.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. So I was thinking, so we also are into electric mobility. So right now our product is not yet built, but we have done the research on the market surveys also done, and also regarding what are the different component prices. We have taken the performa from the sellers who will be providing us with the different equipments, right? So what we are thinking is right now to make a prototype of what our offering would be, and then market it particularly using the different social media platforms, and particularly in our target segment, target market, which we have selected as New Delhi, right? So what we are thinking is right now what we can do for generating our sales process is first of all letting them know what is our offering, and then generating their response. So if we are promoting it on different platforms and we are getting the required traction and the required
Right.
virality, people are liking it, people are talking about it, and then we can showcase our product to them, and then let them use our product, and then record their responses, what are the different modifications that they would like into our product.
Yeah.
And then once we have the required data, we can go for the production and by approaching some investor or a bank either. So what do you think about our approach? So because it is our capital intensive project, so right now for building even one product we require more than 1.5 to 2 lakhs. So directly approaching investors with a balanced idea of what we have approached, what we have thought is to approach the solution in the same way. So what are your thoughts on that? So how we should go about it?
I think what you described seems like a perfect, whatever is according to the book, and it seems like a perfect sales cycle if you can get it done. Definitely, and I would say, I mean, since you're still in a very early stage and you don't have the
Yes,
product,
yes.
etc. Now it's very important to get in this kind of very broad market research done. Now is the right time, and to be even convinced about your own product yourself, because if you're asking for an investor, if it's a capital intensive product, you need to be convinced as well, and understanding that definitely these are the customers. If I do get the investment, so and so
Yes.
person is definitely going to buy it. So I think what you said made perfect sense, that you're going to reach out to as many people as possible, make them fill out questionnaires, and if you're getting positive response from that, then you reach out to them, right? And then you ask them to give feedback, etc. You're going to have demo, and you have one or two products ready as a demo. Is that what you said? Is that?
No, actually, what we are saying that we have already taken two surveys, two market surveys. So first one was to generate what are the response and how do they like of us switching to an electric product. So the
Right.
next survey was particularly regarding what are the different problems that they are facing and what they would look into the next solution, so that we can finalize our value proposition according to our target market. So we have the responses of our demography, which we were looking for, basically the age of 20 to 30. Most of the responses are from the same age group.
Right.
So what we are thinking, so once we have a clear picture of how our product, how our equipments will be available to us once this COVID situation is eased a little bit, then we are looking forward to build it by either bootstrapping or looking forward to some close friend circle group to finance our product, and then showcase it into the target market that we are looking forward to, and then generate the user response.
Yeah. I think absolutely makes sense what you're saying. And just, I mean, even later, once you bootstrap it and get something going, getting that feedback, response, trial runs in a product like this makes absolute sense to get in further investment, because then they know that you already have something up and running. It becomes easier to trust when once you have these kind of feedbacks and have some demos and pilots done.
Yes, so as someone has already asked in, I guess, in the session, that instead of directly asking our consumer customers to pay in about certain down payment and then pay installments, so what
Yeah.
we can use is the model of advance payment, so that we also have some working cash flow to finance our products. So not asking the investment to be made upfront from any investor. So we can use a customer finance models to generate some cash flow before the product is even made.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you can get people to agree to doing some advance payments, and if they themselves believe in the product enough to give you enough.
Joey?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. See, I think my question is on our pitch deck, which we have to prepare. See, when I look at it, the two slide inputs, which is for one is a customer discovery and the financial is not covered. So, are we going to? Is this anyway connected to that slide preparation, or are we going to have other workshops for that two slides content and preparations?
So financials, you'll have a separate webinar for financials. So that will be covered in that, right?
Okay.
Customer interactions, this is somewhere connected to it. So all of this is kind of leading to the customer interaction. So in the market survey and just getting out into the market and getting customer feedback, and that is essentially what you put on the slide. So we have another one on customer interactions as well, just the one after this, which will again reiterate the sales process and focus on customer interactions. So that time I think it will be clearer. But the idea is to start. I mean, if you haven't already, and this is for everybody, not just you. If you haven't already, just start with customer interactions and market surveys, because we need time for that. And that needs to be put at least a few of the customer interactions, the results from that needs to be put on the slide. Right. So we are just going to have mock sales pitch, so that will also give you clearer indication on getting a feedback on your sales process as well through an external mentor who's been in the space for a long time. So that should also make things easier to do.
Okay.
Just gonna go through this quickly, right? Because we are pretty much out of time. And then on the next session, what we're going to do is overview of the mock sales pitches, right? We're going to understand. So we have few mentors coming in, and you'll each have some time with them to give them a mock sales pitch and get their feedback separately, which I think would be very useful process to do at this early stage, because they being as a part of the industry. Some of them have been doing sales themselves, etc. So we have a pool of these mentors and coaches, and they give you feedback on your pitch decks. I think it will be quite interesting and important. In the next webinar, we are going to talk about customer discovery. So understanding more of how customer interactions work, how should you approach them, and then, as Rakesh was asking, how do you put in on the slide as well for CLP will be covered. Better creating sales narratives, and what do sales metrics ideally should look like. All of these will be covered in the next webinar that we have. I think it will be on this Friday. This one, and then I think next week, if I'm not wrong, but you'll be informed of this. We'll have the mock sales pitch then after this webinar, just to give you some time to prepare your mock sales pitch before you pitch in front of the external mentors. Right? Sheet, maybe just a few minutes if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we can close the session.
So before the mock sales, Joey, you will be notifying us in advance, right?
Yeah. It'll be this Friday, the next webinar, and after that will be the mock sales pitches.
Okay.
We'll notify you.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
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 This is regarding the climate impact calculations, actually.
Mithilesh, hi. Yes.
Yeah. This is regarding the climate impact calculations. Is that necessary that only the carbon footprint reduction is to be indicated in the slide, or we can just give a breakup of it, like how it is achieved and all?
And I don't
Actually,
understand the question. I replied to you on mail, right? Didn't I? Mithilesh?
Yeah.
I think I replied to you on mail, right? About
Yeah.
your carbon calculations.
But
what's the question again?
Like our product is an AC, like which uses water as a refrigerant with reduced power consumption. So
Right.
can I give a breakup of the carbon footprint, like how it is achieved and something like that?
Yeah, you can. When you need to show it on a bar graph. But maybe we take this conversation offline over email because it's not pertinent to this webinar. Right? I'll email you. If you have more doubts, you can always email me.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Okay. Let's close this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great. Thank you everybody for attending and listening patiently. If you have any more questions, doubts, please book slots in the open office hours. Be happy to address them. Let's see you for the next webinar, which I think will be on Friday, but of course Sachin will be sending you the schedule for the same. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joey.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.